keep stealing t-shirts out of Sarah's shop. Why not? Right? I'm starting to walk around like a frickin' Howtohunt billboard in town all the time with these hats and shirts on all the time. It's so basically all I got left to wear. Because I've ruined all my other stuff with fish blood and guts. Anyway, quick note on, I made a post earlier really had me on fire. I'm still on fire. You know how passionate I am about people's speech being suppressed. This topic is a great example of it, right? A lot of the previous names, as I said earlier, the previous names who were basically in control of this topic when it publicly somewhat controlling the narrative of this topic for quite some time. And we all know now clearly that those individuals played a big role in suppressing a lot of people's voices. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a crime. That should be an absolute crime. It's a crime against humanity to keep somebody from speaking, especially when it comes to truth. I think I even stated that in my post earlier on the community page, that I strongly believe that's an act of war against the people. From what I've learned from observing what's going on in various societies and countries around the globe, of what has happened to the people in the last few years, is the negative effect that suppression of speech has on us as a community, society, as free citizens. It's an act of war, stopping people from speaking. For me, it's right up there for violating human beings. It's in the top 2 or 3 as far as I'm concerned. Next to murder, rape, it should be considered to be right up there when you look at the evidence in your face of the results of certain groups or certain individuals successfully keeping people from speaking. You might as well just put somebody in prison, right? Without a voice, what are you? You're nothing. And when somebody can control your voice, what are they? They're like the head of the prison, right? They control everything about you. So I'm just trying to get across to you guys clearly how I feel strongly that suppression of speech is an act of war against humanity, against humans. It's an absolute violation. And we need to fight it and fight back and treat it as such. We need to fight that with all we have, because that is all we have in the end. Right? We have each other, and we have our speech. Which one is okay to take away? Take away our speech, we don't have each other anymore. We don't have anything. And a friend of mine forwarded me a screenshot of a sticker, which was directly from the Canadian government, and it's on the hospital doors, entrance doors here, just down the road. And it's for vax injury. Remember that one? Remember when all the medical professionals were coming forward with concerns about that? And they lost their jobs, they lost their voice, people attacked them. The government successfully had people attacking each other. And here they are supplying an option for the injured now, later on. Do you realize how significant that is? This is my on fire look. I like to think that I'm a rational thinker and I keep my shit together, but I'll tell you what, I am absolutely on fire. How people were successfully manipulated to go against each other, family members against each other, co-workers, neighbors, friends against each other, still against each other, because they were manipulated to be against each other. There's no other reason. They were manipulated to go against each other. So you get lost in the quagmire. That quagmire of confusion, misinformation, the freedom of speech taken away is such an effective tool. And I'm going to make sure, as long as I get a voice, I'm going to make sure that nobody forgets it. Ever. And I hope that all of you pass this along, possibly, to make sure that we never ever allow that to happen again. And if it does, we fight it like we're in a war. You have to. Okay? You have to fight that like you are in a war. It's so destructive. So many people lost their lives, lost their jobs, lost their homes because of that alone. Just because they were trying to speak out, because they could, because they're a free human being. Right? And only to have the government turns around and quietly goes, okay, well, here, we're going to supply this. There's a little bit of a program for all you thousands of people who were injured from the mandatory vaccine. Oh, we didn't make anybody take it. Oh, didn't you? You threatened them with their jobs. You took away their ability to feed their children. And now you're going to say you didn't make them take it. I'm so on fire. I'm so on fire. So, I'm pleading with all of you to be brave. Stick together. Do not let anyone annihilate your community ever again. Never, ever again. And if something happens again in the near future, you fight it with all you got. Fight it. Okay? You have to fight back. Alright? Don't take the bait. Don't ever turn on your neighbor. Don't ever turn on your family, your friends, your coworkers ever again. Sit there, take a deep breath, think rationally, and think about what it is and how it is that you are possibly about to attack your neighbor. Encounter it and go against it, and embrace your neighbor, support your neighbor, and go after the source. The source is trying to prevent you from speaking truth and sharing truth. It doesn't matter what the topic is, all right? I don't even know if I'm making sense. I don't practice this. I don't rehearse shit. I try to hope that my brain meshes up with my mouth smoothly and delivers it smoothly to the camera. Makes sense. But I'm so on fire. I'm so on fire. And I realize I do have a bit of a voice, a bit of a reach through this channel, so if I could just somehow reach every single human being I can and encourage them to stick with each other and fight back with all you got. You come across someone or some group that wants to stop you from speaking truth that's going to help your family, help your neighbor, help your coworker, help your community, you fight them. Fight them. And if you're not strong enough to fight, you go find some people that are. Alright? Because I got your back, and so do millions of others through just this one platform here alone. There you go. That's my babble for today. Now, I'm going to get some voices heard. Right? Do you see why I don't stop? Do you see why I will not stop? So many of those other individuals, when it comes to this predominant topic that we've tackled on this channel, the amount of people who had the control, who had the lens in their face, tried so hard to shut me up. Now do you see my motivation? Do you see? Do you see why I have gone at it like a dog and made sure that this becomes not only not suppressed, this has become the #1 place to be heard in the world. So, take that, bitches. Right? And that's direct to those individuals who tried to stop my voice. And I let this be an example to every single one of you. When somebody tries to prevent you from speaking, you speak loudly and you don't quit. Right? And as long as you represent the good, you will win. Okay? Proven right here. You will win. And you don't quit. And you overrun them. Alright, I gotta stop babbling. I gotta make this about all the people, which this channel is about the people. And I will share their voices right now. First up, I think I went back and I successfully found a lot of voices that need to be heard from who knows how long ago, but back earlier. I'm just trying to find all the people that have been sitting there lost in the quagmire and haven't been heard yet, and I hope I was successful today in finding a bunch of them. Alright, this is titled What I've Seen. I'm sorry I suck at telling stories. I've listened now to more of your YouTube videos and realized that I really suck at telling stories. So if you don't want to tell me a story if you don't want to tell me a story that makes complete sense. I've been hunting for years, mostly on my own, because I live in a place where I don't know anybody around. me, and I don't trust anybody to go hunting with me, so I just turned by myself mostly. Because there's even a period in this, and it's a big one. Let's see if I can do this and make it sound good. I apologize if my story doesn't seem legit, but it's my story and it's true. And if you don't like it, whatever, I really don't care because I know it's true. I'm not trying to offend you by stating that I appreciate you sharing your stories and sharing other stories. It's kind of cool to know that I'm not alone in what I've seen and heard. My brother also has seen lots of their sign. He says that he's been a lot of places where the trees are bent over in a kind of a U shape, as what he described it as. And he's seen trees that have been uprooted and put in the ground upside down. And then he has noticed where he has gone through on a trail, came back through that same area later in the day, and there are trees that are obviously broken off of their trunks and have been placed across the trail where he went through. He says he's never seen one though. He has just seen a lot of their dwelling sites. And I guess by dwelling sites he means he saw a pine tree tipped over and all the branches were like hollowed out. And there were a lot of smaller branches placed over the top of it. And it went smaller and smaller until it was kind of a mud on top. Like it was basically a house. He said his son went to that tree that was tipped over and he took a picture of him in front of it. And they heard a large tree behind his son being smacked against another tree, and they decided it was smart to get out of there, and they left. You can share as much as you want. Again, I'm not good at telling stories. All right, so there's 2 or 3 emails here in one from the same person, all right? And again, there's no punctuation, so be patient. Sorry, I forgot to tell you my name. My name is Rob, and I don't care at all who knows or received enough ridicule from other people. I just don't give a damn anymore. The first time I felt that eerie feeling of someone watching me in the wilderness, I was pushed off the thought and didn't worry about it. But as my friend and I were hunting with her .22 rifles, we continued to walk for about 5 miles. In the feeling just continued to sit. And the feeling just continued to sit with us. There's typos. I got to make sense of this on my own, all right? But we're going to get through it. I'm going to make sure he's heard no matter what. For about 5 miles, and the feeling just continued to sit with us. I asked him if he felt the same, and he said he did, but we kept on, I got an itchy nose, but we kept on hunting and kept on shooting ground squirrels, and never did see anything. We ended up going home that night, and I just thought it was weird how eerie we felt the entire time. And then last year, was sometime in 2019, I was out picking huckleberries in the fall with my family in Idaho, in the Caribou National Forest, and felt that same eerie feeling. So I put myself in between my family and the feeling that I had in the wilderness, and I had a tactical tie holster on with my 9mm, and noticed a hairy looking man, dark brown in color, and it looked like I could see from his waist, almost his nipples area, to shoulders and head leaning out past a tree looking at me and my family. Not thinking, I reached for my 9mm and drew my pistol, and as soon as I did, he disappeared behind the tree. I was afraid to tell my wife because she would freak out, so I didn't tell her that I had seen it. And obviously I didn't tell my kids either because I felt like they would be scared, but I thought it was a really cool experience. And then last week I was in the Ashley National Forest in Utah, at the end of a road that was closed, and I felt that same eerie feeling and looked in the general area that I felt it coming from, I guess 400 to 500 yards away, and saw the full silhouette of what I guess, if I would guess, it was a male standing on the edge of some Quaker aspen. I went to grab my phone to take a picture, and when I did, he was gone. On this account, I did not see the giant person my friend who was with me did. We were stationed on call for wildland firefighting in Ely, Nevada. We were trying to kill time because we had been stationed there for a couple of months. So we went up into the Cave Lake State Park area We drove to the end of the road, or at least as far as we could get before the snow stopped, as we decided to get out and hike around to see what we could see. We were probably 20 miles away from the closest other human. At least we thought. Nope, don't forget, 0 punctuation. There isn't a period in this. We had split up. He followed the road and I went straight up the mountain. And I noticed again that same eerie feeling. And I heard some animals in the trees northwest of me, so I started to stalk them to see if I could get closer to see what it was. And then my friend started yelling my name, and so I answered back loudly, and whatever I was stalking started running away from me quickly. My friend said as we got into our car, he felt something was watching us, and so he kept on looking back through the rearview mirror as we were driving away, and said that he saw a tall, hairy person watching us as they watched us for several hundred feet. And when we would take a turn down the zigzags on the steep mountain pass, it would come down and watch and see where we were at. Then in the next group of trees, he said my friend had seen them several times before in his military service. He was once a pararescue man. That may be something. That may be something we'll cover in the future if I get him to tell the story. He doesn't like people to He doesn't like people to know that he was in the Air Force. I didn't know anybody ever cared to hear these types of stories. That's the reason I never shared them. I'm only 35 years old, and most of my experiences with these beings has been within the last 10 years of my life. This seems to be happening more frequently. However, in the last 2 years, I've had 3 or 4 different encounters in the wilderness that I've had those same feelings and have eventually seen something. I hope this helps. The first story I shared was in Ashley National Forest, again in Utah. I apologize for not saying that. And the email. Okay, man, gotcha. Now listen, if you're still here following the channel, I apologize it took me so long to get your email, but this is nothing I can do about it. There's tens of thousands of them. But if you have any new updates on the knowledge you've gained, and if your friend who doesn't want anyone to know he was in the Air Force, I'd imagine he's probably here by now. And if he is, share away, man. You can share it through me. I won't sewer you and share your name or where you were. Nothing. I won't share. I just want to hear what you saw, what you learned, and what you know about this topic and any other topics you want to share about. Okay? We don't need to know where you work, what your full name is publicly. Okay? Share it. No more being scared. No more being scared. No more being scared to speak. Alright? Not here. Man, if I could just figure out the recipe to spread around the world to eliminate fright, fear from people. If I could just figure out the recipe to tackle that one and eliminate fear. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? This lifetime, this place where we are, this is supposed to be an absolute enriching, fun, exciting, exhilarating, lovable time. That's what this is. That's why we're here. That's the only reason we're here. That's why we're here. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right? Whoever threw down the evil flare down here, or on this, where we are, it's just so wrong. Alright, enough babble. My Encounter, California, 1995 is the title of this email. I'd like to remain anonymous, please. I got you. I've kept this story pretty much to myself, with the exception of a good friend who had an encounter in Connecticut about 15 years ago. I've feared the repercussions of divulging this story for well over 20 years. Even after my discharge from active service, we were told the penalty would be without mercy, even as civilians, as it was considered sensitive classified information. No shit. Yeah, well, F them. August 95, my Marine platoon was conducting our 3rd counter-narcotic JTF operation in a pre-selected national forest in California, in a location I will keep secret. The past 2 summers yielded solid results with the identification and eventual eradication of several big-dollar marijuana grows in 2 different national forests. That's unfortunate considering it's a natural herb and it's been proven to help people, but that's another topic. You got to do what you're told to do, I guess, right? Federal law prohibits military acting as a police force. Oh yeah, that's right. We were armed but not allowed to engage or make arrests. Our job was to covertly insert into pre-designated areas, chosen because of its remoteness and having prior activity, and from gathered intelligence of Mexican cartel informants who had knowledge of grow sites in and around this particular national forest. Our job was to find a water source, follow it, look for signs, and locate any grow sites. Then we'd set up an observation post and gather intelligence and monitor activity until the state and local law enforcement made the bust. We were only allowed to use deadly force if our lives were physically threatened, and even then it would be a slippery slope. Even if they spotted us and confronted us, we were to hightail and run. Our involvement or lack thereof could make or break a prosecutor's case. We would insert wearing civilian clothes by means of rented vans and SUVs posing as hikers or campers. They'd pull over and we'd bail out, hoping not to be spotted. We'd change into uniform, paint our faces, assemble our weapons and gear, and begin the patrol. We were in 4-man teams on 3-day patrols. Myself and my assistant team leader carried shotguns and 9mm. The 2 junior Marines carried M16s A2s. We had thermals, GPS, compass map, and protractors. We had a radio and a sat phone. We carried water filtration pumps and fire tents because of the threat of forest fire that year. It was a very dry summer. We did not carry a lot of ammunition. Our goal was to not be seen or get out of Dodge as quick as possible. After finding the stream, which ended up being a trickle due to the drought, we pressed on. For about 2 hours, we walked in the stream bed. You know what's coming next, right? With the stream bed walking. On each side were near vertical 50-foot walls. We navigated around an extremely wide curve in the stream. I was on point, and as I came around a giant boulder in the middle of the stream bed, I saw directly in front of me brown fur and large claws. Oh, the large claws, that's a different one. I raised my weapon, which alerted the rest of the team, and it was a bear, a dead bear, lying on its stomach with its head nearly ripped off, twisted so it was facing up towards the sky. Its 4 limbs draped over the sides of the flat elevated rock in the stream, and it had large chunks of meat torn out along the sides of its spine. A gut pile and patches of loose fur were laying right next to it. It was a gruesome sight. I didn't understand what I was looking at. We took up defensive positions because my only thought was poachers. Our Mexican growers, looking for fresh meat after spending several months tending and guarding a grow site. My assistant, a Native American from a Navajo tribe in New Mexico, was the first to spot 2 sets of gigantic bare-toed footprints in the damp sand all around the stream bed. We followed them to the edge of the western side of the stream, and they went straight up the near vertical wall to the top. A person would need climbing gear to achieve that ascent. No ropes, no gear, just disturbed dirt and rock from where they climbed straight up. We heard no one running, no one climbing, no rocks falling, dead silence. A terrifying feeling of dread came over the team. My assistant looked very concerned. To make matters worse, I asked him what the F was going on, and he said, "This ain't good, boss." The footprints were enormous. One set was clearly bigger than the other. I said to my assistant, "Why are they barefoot?" I still didn't get it. He suggested we reroute and change direction. He said we were somewhere where we shouldn't be, and were asking for trouble. He said they were wild men, and this was their kill and their land, and they're probably watching us as we speak. I looked dumbfounded and clueless, and he whispered in my ear, so the other 2 junior guys wouldn't hear and freak out, "Sasquatch." But he called them something else, and for the life of me I can't remember. It was something in his native tongue. I felt like something was watching us now, or was it my imagination? The air in the woods had changed. The woods got quiet. I heard no birds or crickets. Even the mosquitoes stopped biting. I had an area of operation to recon and a mission to accomplish. If I radioed in that we were altering our route and told them why, I would have been relieved of my responsibility and embarrassed in front of the entire platoon. I said, we're moving out, let's pick up the pace and get to our next checkpoint before 1600 hours. As we moved to our next checkpoint, I remember smelling the overpowering smell of rotting garbage. It was intense. It seemed to be everywhere. It was pungent to the point it almost made me sick. Then just went away as quick as it came. Things remained tense and uncertain. But when we discovered empty bags of fertilizer and several yards of gardening hose along the edge of the stream bed, it alerted us to the possibility of a grow site, and we soon forgot all about the weird shit that just happened. We followed the hose down from the stream onto a game trail and into a clearing. About 200 yards off the stream was when we first smelled the unmistakable skunky aroma of marijuana. We could all see bits of fluorescent material through the trees, which we assumed was a tent. So we had a grow site. We did an area reconnaissance, 360 degrees, and we found an ideal overwatch position on an elevated plateau about 75 yards from the growers' camp. We also spotted the pot field. I estimated it at least 300 to 500 plants. We radioed everything in and set up our listening and observation post. Excuse me. The crazy thing was there were no growers, and we heard not a sound. And from the appearance of the camp, it seemed unusually unkept, almost abandoned. Something didn't add up. Did they spot us? Did they make a run for it? Even though these sites were cartel-owned, okay, I get the cartel part, back to where I said that marijuana should be legal, which basically it is now. But the cartel thing, yeah, they should be hunted down, big time. Even though these sites were cartel-owned, they were usually operated by poor farmers smuggled into the woods with minimal supplies, tasked with living the entire grow season in the woods until harvest. After examining the camp and tying up some loose ends, we kind of determined it had been abandoned for some time, but we had to assume they'd be back, or were in the area still. Around midnight, I completed my 2-hour security shift and I fell asleep almost immediately. While sleeping, I remember hearing my guys speaking nervously, scared and confused, arguing and contemplating. I thought it was a dream, but in reality they had a situation unfolding. Less than an hour after falling asleep, I awoke to a blood-curdling scream that punched me right in the gut. I awoke to 3 panicked Marines with the most terrified expressions that I've ever seen on grown men. I asked in my most pissed-off, half-asleep, angry voice, who the F screamed? I thought our cover was blown and the operation was a wash. Their mouths hung open without a single word muttered. I heard the scream again. I never heard anything like this. It was deep and guttural, and it went through you like a sonic boom. It was like a woman screaming, but deeper and louder. I smelled garbage, like we were laying in it. My assistant said 12 o'clock movement, and it's big. I got my weapon, grabbed the night vision. After fumbling around with these now dinosaur-aged goggles, ANPVS 5s, I managed to get them turned on and I put them to my face. I only had to scan for a couple of seconds. I had a heat source almost immediately, and it was huge, and I mean huge. I thought bear, but when it walked from behind the tree, then crouched down real stealthy, then down to all fours behind the growers' tents, I knew it was no bear. It kept raising up, peeking from behind the 2 tents. The growers' tents were set up side by side. It obviously didn't account for us having night vision, and it stood up straight. There was no moon, and it was pitch black out. I could see it fully. But with no ambient moonlight, the night vision was probably functioning at around 70% visibility. I estimate this thing at 10 feet, maybe 5 feet across. Long, lanky arms and no neck. I can still remember how long its arms were in relation to its body. It was not proportional at all. It started growling, and it still didn't sink in what I was looking at. The growling was deep and continuous. I yelled at it. Of all things, I yelled at it. It immediately squatted back down behind the tents like it was thinking to itself, oh shit, they see me. Just then, like an explosion, it came crashing through the tents, charging straight at us. The other 3 Marines were fumbling around in the dark for their flashlights. We were still grouped, but everyone was looking for gear and weapons. I refocused their attention. Direct front, it's coming, make ready. I chambered a shell and remembered the distinct sound of M16 charging handle to the left of me sliding home. At least we had 2 weapons on it. I dropped the night vision. I did not strap them to my face. Instead, I held them there. But as I drew my weapon, I let them go. I told my assistant to grab the night vision, down by my knees somewhere. The only way we could see this freight train coming at us was because it had crashed through the tents. One of the tents got hung up on it, and it was being carried around with it as it charged. It charged maybe 25 to 30 yards before it made a hard left and straight into the tree line. As it entered the tree line, a tree must have snared the hijacked tent, and the tent was now hung up in a tree about 8 feet off the ground. It didn't go far into the woods. The crashing and snapping lasted about 3 seconds and stopped. It was still close. It started growling again, and its volume would go up and down and up and down. The panic was hitting us all hard. Between the cries of "holy shit" and "what the F" and "shoot it, shoot it," I was starting to worry about one of my guys discharging his weapon and shooting one of us accidentally. I called out their names and where their positions were in relation to mine. It was so dark and shit was so confusing. But I wanted all of us elbow to elbow and accounted for, and weapons pointed in a safe direction, and not at the back of my head. This creature started making a different noise now, like a chattering, Chinese-type language, followed by an occasional whoop. Then about 20-second growl. Back to the weird chattering shit. It was so odd, terrifying, and unreal all at the same time. I was trying to keep my shit together. I didn't have the time to process. I wanted to gain accountability and control and make sure I was making good decisions. Even with a monster 50 yards to my 3 o'clock, I still worried about consequence brought forth by my command, or effing up or making a bad decision. We heard a large crack, followed by a second or third crack, and then the unmistakable sound of a tree falling. It had dropped a huge tree with ease. It crashed down with a thud. The tree had fallen into the camp area about 50 yards from us. I asked for the radio so I could inform command of the situation. One of my Marines was fumbling around trying to locate the radio. My eyes were glued to the area from where the tree had fallen. I couldn't even blink. I was absolutely terrified. Again, I asked for the radio. We had 2 weapons on the thing to our 3 o'clock. My assistant was scanning with the night vision, and the 4th Marine was now trying to reach someone on the radio. The last radio check was at 2200 hours, and we were doing 4-hour comm checks. He managed to get someone on the radio, but the signal was garbled. He kept repeating, "There's something attacking us, we need help." They asked to speak with the TL, actual me. I stuck out my left hand, grabbing the radio, and informed command we had unknown hostiles probing our observation post. I didn't know what to say. They asked about numbers and weapons and visual identification. I told them unknown, but we need the rapid response team and an emergency evac immediately. Just then a scream come from our 6 o'clock. A similar scream as the first, but this one was closer. We had abandoned our situation awareness and forgot about covering our 6. We couldn't see the second one, nor could we hear anything other than the initial scream. The one at our 3 o'clock started moving, barreling over trees as it rounded our position, making its way to our 6 from where the second scream came from. I turned on my mag light that was attached to the barrel of my shotgun and followed this thing as it ran on all 4s like a chimpanzee. It moved with such speed and agility and just plowed everything in its way to the ground. For the first time I saw it, it looked brownish red, and it was immense. It had huge thick legs and massive shoulders. You could hear the impacts on the ground every time it advanced. The speed was incomprehensible. It got from point A to point B in less than 10 seconds. It was now 50 yards to our 6 o'clock behind a group of large fir trees. We could hear it breathing. massive lungs, and a massive chest. "Can we shoot, Sergeant?" one of my Marines asked. I said, "No, hold your fire. Lieutenant wants you on the radio." But I couldn't move. I began chattering again, and the response seemed to come from the same area it had taken up. But the tone was different. I raised my shotgun with the mag light still on and made eye contact with this monster peering out from behind the fir tree. It snarled at me and began growling. Its hair had twigs and leaves in it. It had patches of bare skin like it had mange. It had no neck, a huge black eyes. Its jaw muscles on each side of its face were huge. It was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. Here comes Adventure Dog. It was the biggest thing I'd ever seen, and as it started growling, a different growl joined in. I raised the shotgun higher and followed the center fir tree up towards the top, and there it was, the second one. It had climbed this fir tree and was about 75 feet in the air. It managed to get behind us and climb a tree without a sound. I apologize for the length of this story. I just want to include as much detail as possible and to be as accurate as possible. All military discipline had gone out the window. We all had flashlights turned on, and we were yelling at each other and at these beings. One of my Marines was yelling, "Get out of here! Go, get!" Another kept saying, "What the F? What the F?" I ordered everyone to gather their gear, get on their backpacks, and we backed up into the main campsite area, trying to put a little more distance between us and these things. I ordered to gather as much wood as possible. There was a lot laying around from the fallen tree. The tree this animal fell was dead and broken into hundreds of pieces. They were strewn about. I started a campfire, which is probably a terrible idea given the fire conditions that summer, and it's the last thing Marines would do while on real-life nighttime operation. But this was no ordinary mission. It was just so dark, and I was hoping the extra light and the sight of a fire would sway these things from advancing any further. I truly feel they were gauging us, looking for a weakness or an opening. The large one stayed put as the second one would pace out to its left and right. Its head kept jerking around like it was viewing us from multiple angles. It was terrifying how it jerked its head around, never taking its eyes off of us. It came down from the tree in less than 2 seconds. It was faster than a chipmunk and 100 times the size. At this time, help was about 2 hours away. They were going to meet us about a mile north on an old forestry road that we found on the map. When they were 1 hour out, that's when we would make our move and head north to meet up with my unit. It was fairly even terrain and no major obstacles. Back and forth communication with my unit command only created more confusion for everyone not involved. If I were them, I'd be thinking the same thing. These guys are crazy. We made our move out to the campsite. We heard them follow. We left the fire going. Oh, no way. And despite my nightmare situation, I remember thinking to myself, I hope I didn't start a forest fire. But the lingering firelight gave us the courage to venture into the dark woods. My assistant was an ace at land navigation, and I took up the rear with the night vision. Now, properly strapped to my face, I thought about a warning shot or two, but even that would exact a severe penalty. Discharging live rounds in a national forest without a legitimate reason, even though we had a reason, would have landed me in the NJP. I had weapons, but I might as well have been unarmed. Using them would have gotten us in trouble, and would have only angered these beings, because anything short of a .50 caliber round would only piss these things off. They were that big. They didn't harass us much on our trek out. I figured it would have been a prime opportunity for them to make a move, but they kept their distance. But we're still close. The pungent smell of rotting trash still hung in the air, and at one point, one of them advanced out in front to our left flank, but held his position as we passed. As we met up with the response team, they were still close. My platoon sergeant was angry and full of questions, but as these beings made their presence known, he relented. In a way, I was glad these things followed us, because I highly doubt they would have believed us. Who would? They arrived in 2 SUVs and an 8-passenger van. As these things screamed and broke limbs My platoon sergeant acted unusually calm and accounted for everyone and all their equipment and weapons. He would occasionally look in their direction, but made no inquiries about what these things were. He was a very calm and cool combat veteran and wanted to get a good accountability of personnel and equipment, and ask questions later. The response team members set up a perimeter, and I could hear them asking amongst themselves, what the hell are we looking at? Even during a Bigfoot encounter, we were professionals, and it was done by the book. Several Marines kept their weapons at the ready, round in the chamber, but I had unloaded and made safe mine along with the rest of my team. I made sure all my guys go to the van before I entered. The platoon sergeant rounded up the response team, and they began to load up into the SUVs. I finally heard the platoon sergeant ask another sergeant, what the F is going on? As we drove out into one of the blackest, darkest nights I've ever seen. All of a sudden, a huge rock smashed through the front windshield of the lead SUV. The driver cut the wheel hard left, and they ended up rolling over down a small hill, and the vehicle ended up on its side. Again, every Marine present exited the vehicles and set up a defensive perimeter around the downed SUV. One Marine received a broken collarbone and a minor concussion. Now shit was real. At this point, the sheriffs and forestry departments were en route to our location. National Guard Blackhawks were on standby for the entire month of operations, and they dispatched one chopper to provide aerial security. We were to remain in place, maintain 100% security, and wait for daylight. By 7 a.m., the cavalry had arrived, and we were finally on our way out of the forest. We were ordered to never talk about this incident ever, even amongst ourselves. The terrified looks on some of these guys' faces are still burned into my memory. The sounds and smells I experienced that night, along with the terrifying looks of these beings, I will never forget. I'm still scared to go in the woods alone, and still have nightmares. We had a reunion back in 2010, and for the first time while sitting in a hotel bar in Florida, we talked about what we saw, and how it still carries with us to this day. These things are real. I know there's things I'm missing, details I forgot to add, and this was a long time ago. But these beings are not gentle giants of the forest. They're territorial, they're aggressive, and they don't like people, period. People that intentionally look for these things are insane. Leave them alone. And if you come across them, run the other way. Thank you for your time. That's quite the story. Tell us, have a good friend. Sorry, 1 second, you guys. I've feared the repercussions of divulging the story for well over 20 years. Even after my discharge from active service, we were told penalty would be without mercy, even as civilians. All right, so that statement right there, and the details you gave in this email, it would be real easy to figure out who you were if I was one of your original superior officers, right? But then again, 20 years, so I'd imagine every single person that were involved in that are, I'd imagine, all retired by now anyway, right? And I don't think that anybody related to those people would probably be monitoring this YouTube channel, I would guess. But that's a holy shit one. A very holy. Now, sorry, I just received a text. What do you say to that one? I mean, everything. If you want to work your memory, if you're taking notes on all the previous voices heard here, there's a lot of patterns that we're aware of that are included in that experience too, right? I wonder how many of those people that had that experience with those group of individuals are possibly listening to this channel right now going, oh shit, the cat's out of the bag. Tom and Jerry just frickin' cracked it open. No way. You never know, right? Take from it what you will or leave it, but again, you gotta go with your gut instinct when you hear the shares. The one thing that I do is I just try to picture waking up in the morning and thinking to myself, all right, what should I make up today? Because I really need this attention. What should I make up today? And find that email online and email it away. And what would I get out of that too, right? That's crazy, man. That would be an absolute terror. You put us there. You're really good at what you shared. For sure. You're really good at getting across what you shared. I mean, you put me there. I would not envy anyone in that experience, with that experience. That would be absolutely, like you said, absolutely terrifying. Thanks for that share, man. If you got anything else since, or if anybody that was there was involved, picked up some courage from hearing your story shared, throw down. Share my story at howtohunt.com and throw down here, and let's hear your version. We're absolutely curious and want to hear it all. Next. Alright. This is titled Theory and Two Encounters. First theory. My wife and I watch you religiously. I recall one of your videos where you mentioned Steven Spielberg. I'm writing to elaborate on that. I do not believe in aliens. I believe it is us in time travel seeing where we effed up everything up and how to fix it. That's why they look human. Like, but deformed. Even if we got the DNA from them, it would most likely not match. For instance, you could take DNA from an ostrich and match it to T-Rex or any other dinosaur. No, not because of evolution. However, with time travel, it is causing ripple effects in the timelines, hence the Mandela effect. Now comes the last. These portals are from the ripple effects bouncing off of each other that cause portals. The Gimlin and Patterson film was a rare and epic event. Now these two portals opening allow Bigfoot to travel to our universe, which brings more sightings or footprints that disappear. Or 7 miles of prints that just stop. Sometimes they get stuck a little longer, or they call it. They say in another universe we have a copy. What if they are our copies? What if the aliens are us from the future of after nuclear war? This makes a lot of sense to me. Just curious who out here thinks like me. You never know. First encounter. I was fishing by myself on my father-in-law's sailboat, tied behind his and his wife's house in Port Charlotte, Florida. I didn't realize it was dark until their house went dark, which is around midnight. I packed up, went back out of the driveway when my backup camera was covered by what looked like a palm tree. As I was looking in my camera, I could see a hand. I looked out my back window, and every other window, nothing was there. I did not hesitate to look for what I saw and zoomed the hell home. I told my wife, and she has been telling me to email my story to you. The scary part was the only palm trees near me were at the right side of my car, nowhere near the center of my camera. That's interesting. Encounter 2. Went to Georgia to see my stepson graduate from police academy. That night, we went to where he was staying, which was rural, one street light over 50 feet. I gave 2 whoops. Her dog's barking, then I heard a weird bark, almost human-like. I gave 2 more whoops. It started whooping again, but it traveled. I would say 75 to 100 yards from me. I say this because about that distance I could see someone walk across the road, then walk the side of the road towards me. Then this blurry figure stepped into my view at least 4 to 5 feet in front of me. That's creepy. My wife was with me and asked, "Do you see that one?" I said, "Right in front of me." The interesting part was his movement. He danced around in front of me like someone looked me all over, up and down, trying to figure out what I was. I stood still, not in fear, but worried. What will they do if I made a sudden movement like a skittish animal? Because that was the actions that I got. Once he went away, we went inside and talked about it. I was once skeptical, but had that 90% belief, and now I am a believer. I think it's more like a knower. Thanks for educating us, and we do appreciate it. I also believe that they are like us with tribes. Some tribes were combative and others passive. I'm just glad that they were passive, or so I think. You can say my name, and yes, my name is easily butchered, so I'll help it out. Brad Holinka. Gotcha, Brad. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for sending that in. You didn't mention if you were terrified or not. That would have, well, I guess you weren't overly stoked at the palm tree in your camera, but having that weird thing in front of you 45 feet, that should have made anybody terrified, right? Yeah, and there's patterns involved in that story that we've heard, right? Wow. Okay, one more, and then I'm going to get on with my day. Lifelong experiences, title of this email. Hello, Steve. On one of your post videos, you had requested people to write in who had been sexually abused by a parent and had experience with Sabe. That's me and you. Can use my name. I don't give a flying F. Joff Stevens. I don't recall asking that. But anyway, let's get into it. This will be a long one, so buckle up. The abuse began when I was 4 years old, 1966. I don't remember much, thank God. I just knew something was not right, what was happening to me. And that is very, very unfortunate. I was raised by my dad, Canadian Air Force, and stepmother, the perpetrator, in Winnipeg, Manitoba. My first interaction with Sabe was at my dad's farm in the little town east of Winnipeg. I was running from one field over to our cabin about 2 acres away, and I cut through a line of 2 to 3 trees, and what I thought was a bear stood up on 2 legs and looked at me. To me, it was massive. In my 4-year-old brain, instinct said, run. So I did. I told my stepmom what I saw, and she said I was imagining the bear. Fast forward 2010. By now, I'm in the U.S. Air Force Security Forces stationed at Camp Guernsey, Wyoming. As a combat instructor, I'm on the land navigation course just after a major training exercise, picking up 5.56 spent blank rounds. I was on an ATV parked on a hill near the exercise area with a bucket gathering the shells. I was downhill from my ride when I noticed all sounds of all forest animals, wind and bugs, and it was dead quiet. I'm looking towards a couple of tall pine trees in a small ditch and trying to figure out what's going on. Then I had small rocks being thrown near me, and suddenly I got a feeling of immense fear. I just returned from my 3rd combat tour in Iraq, and this scared the shit out of me. I told myself, I can face this. Man, was I wrong. Whatever it was, doubled down on the fear. I dropped my bucket and ran to my ride and blasted out of there. This place is super weird. The Oregon Trail is in this area. Wagon ruts, burned furniture, and wagon parts. 2018, I'm working for a Union Pacific Railroad as a freight conductor out of Cheyenne, Wyoming. We're heading west, up 3 track, less grade for heavy trains near the Colorado border. Near the top of the tracks before heading into Laramie, I saw a person dressed in all black. The best ghillie suits I've ever seen. Walking near 8 feet. High snow fence. It was at least 2 feet taller. And massive in build, 4 feet across his shoulders, with arms hanging well below his knees. I told my engineer, look at that dude over there. He said it was probably the ranch owner walking his pasture. I told him that dude has no clothes on. And we were going 15 miles an hour, and he was walking pretty slow. So we watched him for about 2 minutes, and then our train went around a bend. No pictures because you can't have a phone on while in a moving train. Huge safety violation. Our trains had inward-facing cameras 24/7. GoPro, man, get a new modern GoPro. 2022, Colorado Springs, east of Shiver, AFB, my home. Summertime. I'm sitting outside of my garage with my yellow lab, and directly to my east is a power pole a quarter mile away. Late afternoon, and suddenly I hear a 3-hit tree knock on that pole, then another 3-hit knock on the next pole to the south. Then again, 3 more hits on the next one. My dog's ears focused right on the sounds and followed the sounds like a watch movement. Nothing after that, never saw anything. 2022, fall, same area. My wife is driving onto our driveway a quarter mile long. We live out on the plains, no trees. Coming to the house. Her radio is playing at fairly high volume, and she hears a loud whistling sound like someone is next to her in the car. She was alone. She comes in the house and asks me if I heard the whistling, and I said, nope. What are you talking about? No weird feelings or anything of that nature. I've told her about my experiences, and she told me I was crazy to think that. I know what I saw and felt. It is as real as the sunrise and sunset. I think I'm tagged from experiences as a 4-year-old kid. I'm 60 now, and if I ever see one again, I'm okay with that. Perhaps someone can use this information for their puzzle. Absolutely love what you do and the knowledge shared by the village. I've told multiple people what I've seen and heard, and usually get the deer in the headlights look. No matter, press on. Keep on keeping it real, Steve. My best to you and your family and that mischief dog of yours, Joff. It's Joff, Joff. I hope I didn't butcher your name, Joff. And I absolutely appreciate you, man. Huge respect for coming forward and sharing what you know and what you're seeing with the people through me. All right, man? You know, it's funny when you share at the point where everybody says about, you tell somebody to share with somebody and they just look at you like a freaking toothpick. It's like I said, like I've always shared, it's absolute senseless and useless to try to state, like, subscribe, and share, or try to promote this channel in any way. You can't do it. Like I was trying to tell Nino, you can't do it. You can't just go across the street, approach that group of people over there and tell them about this topic and expect them to come and listen to everybody and become engulfed in the topic and don't look away and make sure you share it and talk about it loudly. Well, I just don't think you can. I think the only people that are drawn to this topic are people who have seen or experienced and are confused and want to know what the F's going on. Don't you think? I mean, I don't think there's too many people out there who have not had any experience at all, don't know shit, and all of a sudden they're absolutely engulfed in the topic. It's kind of hard to imagine. I imagine there's got to be a bunch, for sure, who are intelligent, open-minded, and think for themselves. And then, yeah, that would make sense to be interested in this topic and want to find out what the hell's going on, because they're smart enough to recognize the patterns, right? The patterns and the number of first-hand witnesses, and I guess that should conjure up enough interest from people who don't have first-hand experience. Anyways, I'm babbling. You guys know how my brain works. It just spits it out. It uses my mouth to spit out whatever it's got going through it. Anyway, there you go. There's some pretty intense emails today, right? And I'll try not to repeat my message from the beginning, just if you can, please, 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 try to figure out how to eliminate fear from the people, and try to figure out how to create courage and make sure that no one ever allows someone to prevent speech ever again. I know they're doing it today. They're doing it successfully. I think it was Jeff Beck just got taken off of Apple iTunes instantly. No warnings, nothing, just taken down. Who else? Colonel... I'm having a brain fart. Don't you hate that when you know a name well and then all of a sudden you need the name and it blocks? Who's that Colonel? Very respectable, knowledgeable man who's speaking truth about what's going on in the war. And they just deleted his entire existence off YouTube with no strike warnings, no nothing. You're out of here. Boom. Gone. You don't get to speak truth anymore. It's very alarming. It's very, very unsettling, upsetting, alarming, and it needs to be, we need to fight back against it with all we got somehow. We need to fight back against that. Scott Ritter, eliminated from YouTube. No warnings, gone. There's numerous people who are journalists, and they are being held hostage by various Western modern governments today too, right? Because they're speaking freely. So they put them in jail and they made them disappear. Going on today. So how do you fight back against that? Right? The leader of Canada, well, the dirtbag who's put in the position of so-called leader of Canada is one of the absolute worst perpetrators today of hammering on the masses, taking away their ears from hearing news via social media platforms, and as well as suppressing their voice. Right? He's trying to make it a crime now to speak openly and freely and support protesting Listen to me, I'm starting a battle, I gotta go. You get the point, you get the drift. Fight back, alright? I'll be back again, because you're not going to shut me up. You're not going to do it. I'll be back with this army of truth-speaking people, and we're going to continue to get them heard first thing tomorrow morning at 5. Let's go, Adventure Pup. Let's go, buddy.